You are listening to the sermon podcast of Stour Valley Vineyard Church. At SVV, we are passionate about encountering the presence of the living God and being transformed by that encounter. We pray you encounter Jesus as you listen to this week's inspiring word. The missing Jesus. We read in the Bible many promises made by God to reassure us in our faith. Words such as Jesus saying, "I will not leave you as orphans, I will come to you," in John 14. And "I am with you always to the very end of the age," in Matthew 28. Promises that cannot be broken because God has spoken them. Yet there are times in our lives when things happen and we look around and Jesus seems to have vanished. Has God broken his promises? Does Jesus ever desert us, or are we looking at things in the wrong way? Together, we will look at the 3 examples where Jesus went missing and see how close he really is.
How are you doing? Oh, it's so nice to be with you today, and I just feel we've hit the jackpot by coming when you've had communion. I just love communion, and what a joy it is to actually have that with you. So today I've been given the privilege of actually starting a new series for you, which is the first time I've done that since I've left. Maybe that says something I do not know. But the series is called The Missing Jesus. But it could easily be called The Thing That We Miss About Jesus. Because today's story reveals a side of Jesus that we don't always get in our relationship with him. And that is the fear of Jesus. So we're going to read some verses together, and they're going to come from Mark's Gospel, Mark chapter 4. And I better just take my watch off because I can't see a clock in here. And that's always a dangerous sign. Oh, really? Okay, well, that's small. Who can read that? Hang on, I'll put my glasses on. Let's read some scripture together. This is Mark's Gospel, chapter 4, picking up from verse 35. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was, I love that detail, in the boat. There were other boats with him as well. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked themselves, "Who is this? Even the wind and waves obey him." There's a very famous painting, which I'm going to show you. And it's called The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. And it's painted by this Dutch geezer called Rembrandt. And it was on show in a gallery in Boston, USA, until about 1990. Then it got stolen. But we do have this image, which is good news. Yeah. So if we could have a whip round, and that'd be great. And it was painted in 1633. And I want you to notice, we're going to do a small little exercise called Visio Divina, which is a meditation on an image. But I want you to notice, if you can just about make this out, we have a boat here which is on a wall of water climbing high. And we see that the sails are loose, the ropes are loose, and we can see chaos in this scene. And we see disciples in different positions. We see one holding onto the rigging. We see one giving make-out, but there's one just leaning over the side, I suspect being violently sick. We have another couple who are pleading with Jesus. Jesus is awake in this picture. And you see another disciple in front of Jesus on his knees, clasping his hands in prayer. We then see another disciple at the tiller. I'm really sorry, you might not be able to see this, so you just have to take my word for it. But another one at tiller, and I suspect that's probably either, one of the professional fishermen. That'd be Peter, Andrew, James, or John. But there's something else going on here. There's something else going on. Look closely again, and you'll see there aren't 12 disciples in this painting. There are 13. And this is because Rembrandt painted himself in a picture. There he is, in blue with a cap on, and he is looking out at you and me. And it's almost like he's saying, this isn't just their storm, this is my storm, and this is probably your storm too. It's a very powerful picture. And you search it online, you'll get a better image if you want to look at this clearly more. But it's all about this thing that we all go through storms in life. But it's how we go through the storms of life that's going to matter. The things that will make us or break us. Because as we know, true discipleship is not staying on the shore or staying in a safe harbor. It's out there in the uncertainty and chaotic world that we live in. And we are living in a very chaotic world at the moment. There are wars and threats of wars and danger and economies, on the brink, and we don't know what's going to happen with AI, loss of jobs, everything. Everything is quite uncertain. And everything can feel storm-like, saying we are not in control. And so this is going to be really helpful, hopefully, this morning. Because when we look at this, we will see how we can get through a storm. Because we'll see how Jesus comes through a storm, and therefore we are guided by his heart on this one. So I want you to look at the painting again with me. And I want you to try to imagine you on that boat in a storm and consider which one of those disciples you might be. So are you the guy holding on the rigging and trying to fix it? Are you trying to fix maybe your life in your own strength? Even though Jesus is in the boat. Are you the one over the side of the boat hurling? Are you the one sick with worry and anxiety, living in constant fear, thinking the worst? Are you the disciple who's maybe angry with Jesus, letting this storm happen? Are you the one at the tiller thinking, I've been a Christian for a while, I know how to get myself out of this one? This is the picture we have when we try to figure out what we do in times of crisis. And I can imagine quite a lot going on here in this picture. And I find it incredibly helpful. But I want us to now look at the text from Mark. Verse 37 says, there was a furious squall. Now, I'm told that when the cold air comes up from Mount Hermon and mixes with the warm air of Galilee, it can quickly create a very tempestuous situation. It did 2,000 years ago, it does now apparently. So even so, I hear that some houses are on stilts around Sea of Galilee because it is so treacherous when storms get going. The Greek here, forgive me for using just a little bit of Greek, but the New Testament Greek here for furious squall can be translated as hurricane-like, such is the fury of these storms which suddenly pop up. But in verse 38, we read that Jesus is asleep, fast asleep. Maybe he's exhausted with ministry. Maybe he's just so comfortable being himself that he doesn't worry about anything and happy to go into a deep sleep. But we know that disciples had to wake him up, and I got this image that they're kind of shaking him. I don't think it's a kind of tap on. Do we bring him a cup of tea? Do we wake him up? I feel it's in the moment. It's kind of get hold of Jesus. Come on, wake up. And teacher, they say, don't you care if we drown? No, we all struggle here. We want reassurance. We want someone to say to us when we go through tough times, it's going to be okay. Put an arm around us. Or when we get a diagnosis for a chronic illness or something that's going to be totally life-changing for us. Or we have the threat of losing our job. Or the threat that we can no longer pay all the bills because of the cost of living going up. And the last thing to go wrong is the car. It's these times that we reach out for something. Life becomes threatening. And at this point, we all want to hear a calm voice. Or we want an instant miracle. Or we want peace of mind. But we come to Jesus sometimes. And maybe this is just me. Maybe you're also beautifully, wonderfully made and moving on in Jesus. But sometimes I can want my tone to be indignant when I come in Jesus. Jesus, don't you care what I'm going through? And I forget who I'm speaking to. I think it's really important when we read this story to remember something here. Whose idea was it to get in the boat? It was Jesus's, wasn't it? Do we not think Jesus didn't know what was ahead? Do we not think he didn't know there was a storm? Of course he did. And yet he allowed the disciples and himself to get in the boat. The one thing I love about this is how Jesus' tone changes from other previous occasions that we read him in the gospel. In verse 39, he rebukes the wind. He speaks to the wind. And he scolds it like a very kind of stern headmaster or strict parent. He speaks with that authority of a creator, God. At this point, he is more than a disciple's teacher. He's more than a good man. He's more than a wise man. He is God. And in verse 39, his whole character is revealed in 3 words. Quiet. Be still. And we read the wind die down instantly. And it was completely calm. Now, if these 3 words sound familiar to us, it's because you might know Psalm 46. Do you know what Psalm 46, the famous verse, Psalm 46? Be still and know that I'm God. We can read these words out of context. When we feel anxious, we can use them to draw us to a place of calmness. We use them to draw us into the presence of Jesus. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's good. Really, really good. But these words have an extraordinary power when you see the bigger context. See, the whole psalm speaks about how we counter our fear. And it speaks of God's strength. And it speaks of his power in all things. Even when everything looks scary and unpredictable. Now, read the verses before, and you'll see God is speaking these words to the awesome forces of nature and to nations. Verse 2 says, we will not fear. I better put my glasses on, otherwise you're going to get wrong version. We will not fear though the earth gives way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. Though the waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. Now, this sounds like the language, poetic language of an earthquake to me. And it's hard not to think about what's happening in Venezuela. Can you imagine the fear of that earthquake living in a building and suddenly the whole ground moving underneath your feet? And yet the psalmist says, we will not fear. Verse 6 says, the nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice and the earth melts. Verse 9, he makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear, and he burns the shields with fire. Then it says he speaks to them and says, be still and know that I'm God. Gives it quite a different inflection, doesn't it, from the one you might have been used to in your devotional times. See the authority of God coming out here. The psalmist finishes these wonderful words. He says, the Lord Almighty is with us. And isn't that what we see in the boat? Now, the disciples, being good Jewish boys, would have known this psalm well. And when Jesus speaks these words, it would have been hard for it not to resonate with Psalm 46, verse 10. And then Jesus comes back, because he's not finished with them yet. The lesson's not finished. He says in verse 40, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Now, that might be a reference to, why did you not read the psalmist's words in 46 and take them on board? And verse 41 says this. It says, "They were terrified. Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Now, this story appears in 3 Gospels. We call them the Synoptic Gospels, the eyewitness accounts, which is Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Now, in chapter 8 in Matthew, it says that they were amazed, which sounds very English, doesn't it? Oh, quite amazing. Yeah. But actually, again, I went to the Greek and dabbled around a bit, and it actually means they were awestruck when you say amazed. Luke says they were amazed, but also fearful. Mark gets it, being the original and oldest account of this story, says they were terrified. They were terrified. The winds had stopped, but now the disciples had a new fear. Now, this preaches well, doesn't it? The winds had stopped, and yet they were still terrified, but in a different way. See, someone who can sleep through a hurricane and change the weather with 3 words needs a response. It needs a response. You see, this story also in Mark's Gospel is set amongst other what I might call fearful stories, things that we are scared of, like demons and disease and death. But all of them have to surrender to the authority of Jesus. And it's the same here with this story. Because here's the thing, when you're in the presence of greatness, and I'm not talking about Mbappe, Messi, or Kane, okay, for those who want a football reference, I felt I need to get one in at least. The thing here is when we are in the presence of greatness, there's something in us that draws us in. We are overawed with, we're terrified, but also a little bit excited. So I was just seeing on Instagram that our daughter's old school, St. Greg was down the road, they were in the presence of greatness just recently, this week, with old The Rock. And how they got, I don't know, it's all crazy. You've got to look at Instagram. It's all crazy, isn't it, Helen? But it's amazing. And there's this thing, there's a reel on, yes, I was looking at on yesterday for The Rock, showing him meeting Sudbury Primary School. And saying great, and they all got so excited. And he hired out a cinema for them to watch their film. It's all very exciting. Big news here in Sudbury, as you might know. If you don't know, where have you been? Anyway, so the thing is, this is the Jesus we've got. When we're in the presence of greatness, when you're in the great Jesus, you're going to be terrified, but you're also going to be excited. You're going to be overawed. And yet there's something Jesus that allows us to draw near to him. He is the gentle Jesus, the one who's warm and compassionate and merciful and one in the arrow knit jumper, but he's also the creator. So there are 3 implications I just want to bring out for us this morning on this. The first one is this. I want to say there's a good side to fear. There's a good side to the fear of Jesus. John, the disciple, the apostle, the one whom Jesus loved, remember him, the one who leant back on Jesus at the Last Supper, leaned actually on him, the greatness. He had a picture of Jesus as his rabbi, his teacher. He saw Jesus ascend into heaven. But it's only years later when he has his visions on Patmos that he gets another picture of Jesus. In Revelation 1:17, John says, I saw him. I saw Jesus. I fell at his feet as though dead. Frozen with fear. He saw the whole glory of Jesus. This is not him exaggerating or using hyperbole. This is John saying how it was. The problem for us, the problem for me, is that we can be too casual and unmotivated sometimes in our walk with Jesus, that we don't want to fully surrender everything. Some stuff, but it comes with terms and conditions, as if we are the one in control. And I think part of the reason is that we forget who Jesus is. We see the Jesus, the kind, gentle-hearted Jesus, maybe in the pastel shirt and shorts and sandals, smiling, maybe at the barbecue. But the other side, we mustn't forget, because that's the powerful Jesus. And the lack of obedience might sound a bit like this. Well, I'll say sorry when they do. Or I'll come back to church when I'm ready, but at the moment I'm still ticked off with someone. Or, okay, I hear that, but I'm going to fix it my own way. Or, yeah, I'm not quite ready to give that up yet. I've only been a Christian for 25 years. In my own time, I'll do it. Listen, do you know who you're praying to? Do you know who you're talking to? This isn't the Jesus of the arrow-knit jumper. This is a Jesus who's at the beginning of creation, making heavens and earth, making all that's within it. C.S. Lewis wrote this wonderful book, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, which is now being remade into a new film. We have Mrs. Beaver saying to Susan, if there's anyone who can appear before Aslan without their knees knocking, they're either braver than most or else just silly. And Mr. Beaver responds to Lucy. He says, so Lucy says, well, isn't he safe? And Mr. Beaver says, safe? Who said anything about him being safe? He's good. He's the king. He's not safe. He is the God who quietens the hurricane on the Sea of Galilee. He's also the God who compassionately heals the sick, who welcomes the sinner. He is a God who forgives sins, whatever has been done. He is kind, compassionate, tender, merciful. But he is also the fierce, authoritative voice of God who will say to that situation and that situation, no. Be still. Know who I am. Enough is enough. Second implication for us for this story is fear does not exclude love. It doesn't seek to control, to be coercive. It doesn't want to suppress the will that God has given us. It works with our free will. But anything that uses fear as a tool to get our attention to do something bad, and we might call that religion. If you have to control people that way to get them to do something, that's not love. I know this after 31 years of marriage. Or is it 32, Emma? Nearly 32, coming up this month. I can't force Emma to do anything. If you know Emma as well as I do now, it's impossible. But out of love, we listen to each other and we do things. We change and we respond. We'll say sorry when we need to say sorry. And I do what Emma tells me to do, because that's the kind of husband I am. Oh, I should pay for that later. See, the Jesus in the boat, Jesus, let's be honest, is a bit scary. But it's meant to be scary, to evoke in us an awe and a wonder. Not to frighten us into submission like a scared little rabbit. Take fire, okay? Now, we had this last week, 3 or 4 days ago, we had a big fire on the common at the back of our garden. This is a little bit scary, because if it spreads like wildfire, our house is in line, okay? And it's, I think it's something like 10 fire engines came, didn't they, Emma, something like that. And it's quite scary, all the sirens going off. Fire is dangerous. But you'll go home today and you'll cook your lunch with it. And fire will be great, because without fire, you won't be able to cook your lunch. I'm talking to people who don't use electric, by the way, okay? Fear of God complements our awesome love. It recognizes his majesty. And I think it also sets our posture right in prayer when we come to him. It enables us to say, Our Father is a son or daughter coming to him, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. The holiness of God. We walk on holy ground. But sometimes, as I said, the storms will test everything in us, and they will just keep coming. So let me tell you a story. After we handed over this church, we packed our bags, and we went through border control, and we found ourselves in Surrey, living in Guildford. And we expected a quieter time. You know, if you know the gentlefolk of Surrey, they're all very polite with each other, except on the roads. But on the 7th of September 2023, just before we were due to go on on holiday for a week in Devon, Emma was diagnosed with cancer. And so after speaking to the hospital, an operation was set for the 25th of October, the next month. On the 11th of October, at the pre-op, which I was at with her, I was told by the consultant that Emma must arrive calm and relaxed to recover well. This is where it got interesting. While at the hospital, Emma received a phone call from her father, Barry, who most of you know, to say that her mum had had a massive stroke. 18 hours later, we were up at West Suffolk Hospital. We had gathered around her bed as we saw Joan quietly slip away into the arms of Jesus. We were in shock. We got a crematorium date in record time in 9 days, 2 days before Emma had to go in for her operation. That was an answer to prayer in itself. But the storms kept raging. And 2 days before her birthday, 4 days before the funeral, Jelly, our cat, came through the back door with her right back leg hanging off. Took her to the vet. She had to have emergency amputation to save her life. She had the operation. The next day, we then had to bring that cat with us to Sudbury because we couldn't leave her behind with anyone. The funeral happened on the Monday. Still, a lot of us trying to figure out and process our grief. It was awful. But on the way home, Emma had given out so much, spent of energy, and there'd been other stuff going on in the background that I'm not going to bring to you this morning, but this wasn't just a couple of things going on. It was part of a big picture of stuff happening that year. It was a year of storms for us. On the way home, pulling off the M25 from the Guildford exit, a car hit her from behind. Fortunately, she was not injured, or our daughter was not injured. But in the early hours of the morning, Emma went into shock. We had to phone 111. Just 36 hours from then, I had to deliver Emma to the hospital in East Grinstead at 7:30 in the morning, calm and relaxed, hoping to recover in the operation. But guess what? There was still power in the storm. After the operation, the hospital rang and said, yeah, Emma's out. The operation went well, but we've got a problem with her blood pressure. It's dangerously low. We're going to have to give her round-the-clock care through today and through the night. I thought, oh. At which point, I fired off a message to Pete Gregg. Some of you might know him from 24/7. And told him, I said, Pete, I just need prayer. I just need prayer now. And he was in Vienna at the time with some leaders for a 24/7 prayer gathering. And he said, you know this is spiritual attack, right? And I thought, oh yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. And he got some guys to pray at that end, and we rallied some prayer this end. And I then, the next morning, The storm was still raging. I woke up to this heavy oppression, this darkness around me. I got in the car, and from where we're on Guildford to East Grinstead, it's about an hour. Honestly, I shouted to the Lord. I shouted to the devil. I prayed loudly. I worshipped. I spoke in tongues. I gave everything. I'll tell you something. I was exhausted. It's an hour's journey. And for this day, I do not know what the other motorists around me thought of me. Probably thought I should be on the road. But I got there. I got to the hospital. And as I got out the car, I just sensed this peace. I walked through to the hospital, got to the ward, and this nurse came out. She goes, "Oh, you're here. Well, I've got some good news for you. Just in the last hour, Emma's blood pressure started going up." These are storms. We will go through storms. We can't avoid the storm, but we're not alone in the storm. There's something which you would see on this painting, which you might have noticed, those who are astute and have good eyesight. And that is in the painting, in the top left-hand corner, is blue sky. Anyone notice that? Good. 10 out of 10. When the disciples are in the boat, they're looking the other way. They weren't looking at the blue sky, but Jesus was looking at it in the painting. He saw it. Jesus sees everything. He sees the past, the present, the future. And it's exciting. It's scary, but it's exciting. Jacques Philippe says, every trial, no matter what its causes and characteristics are, is a trial of faith, or of hope, or of love. Slide. There's a slide. Yeah, you can see the blue sky. Brilliant. Third implication. Moving on quickly. Those who fear Jesus have nothing else to fear. If you fear Jesus, you have nothing else to fear. See, worry comes from either two things. One, forgetting Jesus has power over the storm, or secondly, doubting his commitment to us in it. It's quite simple. See, fear does not have the last word. That painting on there shows you fear does not have the last word because there's blue sky in it. And we carry his presence today. We carry the presence of Jesus in us. If we carry the presence of Jesus in us, it means that we carry his authority in us, in his name. So the question is, will we use it? Will we use the authority over the storms in our life? I had to do it in the car all the way to East Grinstead. Back in 1871, there was a great fire, the Great Chicago Fire. And there's an eminent lawyer called, and you'll love the name, Horatio Spafford. Oh, I wish I had a child I could name Horatio. And if you do this morning, have a free book. Rest of you pay. And Horatio Spafford lost most of his money, most of his possessions in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. 2 years later, there was a Great Recession in the States in 1873, and it wipes him out yet again. Yet, this man, a follower of Jesus, feels the call to actually support Dwight L. Moody in his mission to the UK. And so he wants to join him, but he can't quite join him at the moment because he's trying to sort out stuff in Chicago. So he sends Anna and his 4 daughters ahead of him in the ship Ville de Havre. Halfway across the Atlantic, the Ville de Havre collides with another ship. The ship sinks. That day, 226 people died, including his 4 daughters, Annie, Maggie, Bessie, and Tanetta. Anna, his wife, was the sole survivor. And she telegrams her husband back in the States with just 2 words: saved alone. He sets sail to join Anna, who's staying at this point in Wales. And halfway across Atlantic, the captain of the ship pulls Horatio alongside him and says, "This is the spot where the Ville de Havre sank." Horatio goes back to his cabin, and he gets out a pen and some paper, And he starts writing some words that will become a famous hymn. And that hymn is, "It is well with my soul." Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, let this blessed assurance control that Christ has regarded my helpless estate and has shed my own blood for my soul. Now his words, "It is well with my soul," might sound a bit trite if you didn't know the backstory. Would you agree? But here's a man who's not in denial, in heavy grief, and yet he opens his heart and finds security in Jesus of the storm. Even in utter agony, when he probably can't even put two words together, although he does somehow because it's this amazing hymn. But here's the point. Jesus is always awake in our pain. He never slumbers or sleeps. He's always awake to what's going on in us and through us and with us and around us. And the big question for us as I close is this. Seriously, who really got woken up in the storm? It wasn't Jesus. He was awake, never slumbers or sleeps. Knew exactly what was happening. It was the disciples. They had to be awakened to the Jesus, not just the teacher, but Jesus, the Creator God, who made heavens and earth and all that's within it. They had to be awakened to his power to change situations. See, every storm, every crisis holds a beautiful opportunity for us to wake up to this power. Every time. To wake up to his goodness, his love for us, his mercy towards us, his kindness towards us, his joy for us. Because this is the thing. His presence is always with us. Because Jesus is always in the boat. Amen.
Thank you for listening to the Stour Valley Vineyard Sermons podcast. We pray that you would encounter God and be transformed by that encounter. For more information about our church, you can head to our website, stourvalleyvineyard.org.